This is episode 9 of Radio Artes, a podcast by Studium Generale Artes. Welcome to episode 9 of Radio Artes, part of the miniseries on equality in the arts. As you know by now, I am not the only host of this series. Welcome back, Katelijne.
Hi, Dennis. It's nice to be back again.
To our fifth episode on the roadmap to equality in the arts. And today we talk about new platforms. More specifically, we talk about a platform that has a brilliant name, I think. It's called Tender Center.
Yes, well, the second panel in the morning program of the conference was focusing on what an intersectional approach can possibly entail. What questions, what insights, new platforms and acts of resistance arise when we really live out this intersectional approach that Nancy Jouwe was talking about in the first episode. And the work group really wanted to stress the importance of new initiatives and platforms to enhance the visibility of artists, often misrepresented and underrepresented in the regular art world. So with Tender Center, we presented an example of a new model which can give access to experience and knowledge about new ways of acting, working, experiencing, learning, and very important, enjoying together the joining of forces. And Tender Center is an intersectional, anti-racist, feminist queer collective space, and they're based in Rotterdam. The space is actually run by a collective of 11 individuals, but during the conference they were represented by Yin Wong and Catherine McBride.
Hi, I'm Yin, and Catherine and I are here on behalf of Tender Center. We are a collective of 11 people, and we are also supported by volunteers and people that help at different capacities at different times. And we're going to talk a little bit about how we started out. We opened our doors for the first time in October 2018. A little bit of a context of the where Tender Center is located. It's located in the Old North of Rotterdam. It's actually next to my studio, which is next to my house. I live in a collective, a co-op, so I share my house with 6 people. And my neighbors, they are from the same collective. They share the house with 5 people. We have an open garden where we tore down a wall. And one house next from us lives my friend Shelly, who has an old-time band, really cool. We're good friends, and we had this one place in between us where a lady lived who was very sort of closed and kind of a recluse, and her garden was really badly maintained. And Shelly and I would always look at the garden and think like, if Mevrouw Eggink leaves at one point, we would love to open up the entire garden and hopefully have something cool in that place, because it's actually not a living place, but it's a shop space. But because Mevrouw Eggink had been living there for 40 years or so, it had maintained a living. But anyway, it started from this idea to have the garden there, and conversationally, I got in touch with some friends of mine that were actually thinking about opening a queer space. And one led to another, and we took the space, or we rent the space now. That is now Tender Center. And Catherine will read our sort of manifesto text that's on our website about Tender Center.
Yeah, and I think just quickly to add to what Yin said, it's maybe an important thing to mark that one of the desires of the original group that established the space was for a queer space that was maybe more women, non-binary and trans-led than other existing spaces in the city. And when I say that, I'm talking about physical permanent spaces rather than kind of spaces that exist in temporal moments. So Tender Center is currently 11 people in a space who go by these words. We're a collective of anti-racist feminist queers who are building the beginnings of a community centre for culture, or a venue for queer events, or a Les University of Life in Rotterdam. Tender Centre is a relational infrastructure and venue with parties, agitation, co-learning, bodies in varying states, gardening, swords, conversation, workshops, food, DIY darkroom, curry, and a solid sound system. And that last bit wasn't true when we wrote this, but now it is. And Tender Centre is a not-for-profit association, and we're currently running on funds from our own small pockets and the energies of those who support us in making the space and community activities possible. Thank you, everyone. Thank you to our lesbian, trans, feminist, queer, POC friends, and wider LTGBQ, LTGB. I get it really mixed up with the different languages, and we added a whole bunch on the end. Communities and allies for creating a space for music, art, poetry, politics, hanging out, and care of all queer kinds. Tender Centre Rotterdam is the place to go for all who seek to question heteronormativity and want to bask in queerness. TC is feminist, TC is a trans space, TC welcomes refugees, asylum seekers, and others affected by immigration systems. TC likes dancing in the daytime. It's a space to gather and generate energies that overspill its boundaries. TC has a problem with categories, even self-defined ones. TC is a space-time that is being practiced by the community of people who inhabit it. It's a practical and a dreaming infrastructure, a house for light and deep hanging out, and thinking thoughts towards as yet unthinkable possibilities. A house for learning the tools you're going to need in the future we're building. A collective practice of shared care and responsibility that is sensitive to its inevitable painful failures and creates spontaneous joy. TC is open to all when that's possible, but sometimes it needs to set limits. TC acknowledges the messiness and complexity of life and the uneven distribution of absolutely everything and wants to talk and listen and act about this. TC is a membership organisation. Just to flag, I think a reason for reading this whole text is that it's like one thing that every member of the collective has agreed on, and I think that's something that feels important, like when we get asked to kind of speak on behalf of what we do when we're many and we're different. So we're just going to quickly run through a couple of events. So it just gives you an idea of the range of stuff we're doing. There's like reading groups, support groups, us hosting other people's events, like Girls Go Boom, do like a ongoing kind of performance, open mic thing. There's some of our own events, which is like an orchestra that is yet to happen, but it's like an orchestra for non-musicians who have no musical training and want to play music together. There was a climate march, banner making, gathering, and that's something the space has been used for, which I think is something we're thinking about a lot as a collective, is kind of building alliances of solidarity across concerns and issues. And so because we have a physical space, then it can be used as a space for gathering and also a sort of space for processing. It's kind of been used the other way around for sort of after marches, so kind of coming down and being together. There was a fashion and styling event, because that's also important too. There's Beyond the Binary, which is a monthly meet-up support group that we have, which is for non-binary and gender non-conforming and trans people in Rotterdam. And so it alternates between one month being a facilitated support group, which is led by a very active member of the sort of gender non-conforming queer community in Rotterdam, who's also a trained counsellor. So it's a space for conversation and it's a closed group for anyone who wants to attend. And then that alternates every other month with a more social kind of hangout thing. So it's just a space where people can be and express their gender identity in ways that feels good for them, but without there being an audience.
We get quite a lot of invites also from institutions to work with them, as pedagogical partners or workshop leaders or open up the space for classes and groups to visit, and we do to a certain capacity, but our space is first and foremost for queer people to be able to come and enjoy themselves and be amongst each other, and just also to socialize. And we are only educational in the sense of that we learn from each other through socializing and through the events that we do. Some events are more geared towards maybe knowledge production or activism or whatever, but like it's an effect of what we do at Tender Center, and we're not, we try to not be like this place that teaches people what intersectionality is, what being queer is, or what queerness is, and that you can come and extract information, and we also don't put it out in that way because it's for people to feel good, basically.
Like we also get many requests to participate in not very well thought out research projects, and that's something we do this as voluntary labour in our own time.
Yeah, but because how do you deal with that? How do you say yes to all those invites, or are you very particular about it? How do you deal with that?
We don't have the capacities to say yes to them, so I think we say yes to things that are thoughtful, and a big thing we have is if someone has ever actually, like, I think it's kind of is that we're not ticking a box for someone that they've got like queer participation in their project, that then that it's important that so people that want to be in a kind of dialogue.
You're actually voicing the danger of tokenism here, in a sense, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I didn't want to cut you off. I just want to summarize because it's so important what you're saying. It's kind of, I want to...
Yeah, and usually when people propose a project from an institutional perspective or whatever, we always invite them to come to an event that is, like within like a week or two, come and say hi and get to know us, because, like more than half the proposals we get are people that have never visited the space, and that's, I don't know, it's... then you already can kind of feel it right off the bat what kind of relationship that's going to be. So, yeah.
And that concludes episode 9 of Radio Artists. We will be back tomorrow with the 6th and final installment in the series. Thanks for listening.